Hey there, it's Debbie Potts, and I have another rabbit hole podcast that I wanted to dive into. As we talked about phytates the other week, now I want to talk about lectins. As I do functional lab testing as a FDN practitioner, and I correlate that data with my nutritional therapy practitioner information I get in our NutriQ and intake questions, put that all together with their functional lab testing and genetics. And I'm in the wild health program for the next 6 months. And so we go into learning about wild health, precision medicine, and genetics. And I really keep hearing about phytates and oxalates and lectins. And I just wanted to zero in on what lectins are. So just to review, if you're watching the video, I'm sharing the screen with my friend, Sean Wells, has a great article resource that I always refer to and I've shared before called Your Guide to Lectins, Phytates, and Oxalates. Because the focus on my podcast and coaching clients is to personalize their fueling, training, daily lifestyle habits, help them figure out what they need to do for their health to improve how they feel each day and how they perform in life and their sport, but really focusing on longevity. And as I do a lot of lab tests, we never just do one because they all kind of give us clues to something else going on. So it's root cause medicine type of labs that we do looking at blood chemistry, ideally stool tests as a GI map or gut zoomer, a hormone test using something as the Dutch test, and also food sensitivities and using zoomers and leaky gut test as a wheat zoomer. So what keeps coming up are lectins and wheat. And looking at this information here from Sean, we can talk about anti-nutrients. And we did this in a recent podcast on phytates. So just to review, anti-nutrients, because I know a lot of us are eating nuts and seeds and we're trying to be healthy, but we might not realize what we're eating is inflammatory to our body, even though it's otherwise known as healthy. But anti-nutrients are something we really want to pay attention to, especially as athletes. So natural chemicals produced by plants that can cause negative health effects that interfere with normal absorption of nutrients, minerals, and vitamins they provide. Anti-nutrients are a plant's defense mechanism to prevent any animals from eating them by causing harm, toxicity, and sometimes death. Animals either evolve to adapt to these chemicals, or they stopped eating a particular plant when they realized that made them sick, which is funny. As I'm sitting here in my glass house, we have all these plants, and we were just talking about getting the plant that's this garlic plant, and it is a plant that animals won't eat. So it's always trying to find what plant the rabbits and the squirrels won't eat and how to deter these coyotes like to hang out here, but the squirrels and the rabbits will eat these plants that we just planted, and we're trying to find which plants don't they like. So maybe that's that plant poison, the plant's defense mechanism. We need to find those guys. So plants aren't all that good for you. I think that quote is really looking at properly preparing everything and looking at foods, how we used to have them soaked, sprouted, fermented, and looking at, again, the anti-nutrients in foods as the phytates we talked before about is an indigestible protein that travels through the gut unchanged in high quantities damage the gut wall. They bind to nutrients and stop their absorption. Then we have the oxalates that is a compound found in most plants, many plants. Oxalate binds to minerals and stops their absorption. 80% of kidney stones are formed from the calcium oxalate. And then we're talking specifically today, lectins, they serve as a main storage form of phosphorus in seeds. So we need our phosphorus, but they also bind in minerals to stop their absorption, but also have some health benefits. So it's not that they're all evil, but I always find everything we talk about, as I just was doing mTOR, AMPK pathway, doing sprint interval training, doing hot cold therapy, everything is good in a right dose. So acute stressors, anything we do too much of becomes chronic. And we often talk about less is more. More is not always better. And it comes down to that Goldilocks effect. What is the right amount for you? So lectins is what we hear from Dr. Gundry. And I was listening to podcasts with him, and then Dr. William Davis, who I'm so excited is coming on my podcast soon, talking about the super gut and that super gut yogurt I've been trying to make again. And lectins are something we hear a lot about. So lectins, some people are more sensitive than others to lectins. And this is what I see in the wheat Zoomer test. There's one part of the wheat that's a measurement on the lectin test, and then we'll go into genetics. So some people might react, but again, you don't know what you don't know. So again, test and not guess what's going on from the inside out, because it doesn't mean you're going to have gut bloating and gas and diarrhea. It could come into all forms of random symptoms you don't correlate to your gut. So lectin avoidance diet is common, but we can look at what they do in your body. So lectins are carbohydrate binding proteins of non-immune origin. Simply put, Sean says they're proteins that, when ingested, seek out carbohydrates to latch on into the gut, bloodstream, or other tissues in the body, forming clumps of cells. Doesn't sound good. That can cause immune reactions or other negative health effects. They can also attach certain cells, like the cells in the lining of the intestines, damaging the cells that line the intestine, called enterocytes, and can also inhibit normal cellular function. These enterocytes are tightly packed together and act as that barrier we're talking a lot about lately on the gut health, leaky gut. We want that barrier to prevent toxins and bacteria from entering the bloodstream. And when the damaged, various proteins that are meant to stay in the gut enter the bloodstream with these gaps in between the cells that we call leaky gut. And this can cause digestion issues, inflammation, and what I see a lot of on my current lab tests with clients on the wheat Zoomer are the high levels of LPS, endotoxicity. So we want to address always working backwards. What are you eating? When? Why? How? And looking at how often you're eating things. Are you having spinach and kale in your smoothie every day? As I just heard someone saying today, they have a cup of blueberries and a bunch of spinach, and they're having that in their morning smoothie, maybe once a week, but I don't think it's good every day. So lectins are stable in an acidic environment like the stomach, and they can get broken down by any of our stomach enzymes. They can't get broken down by any of our stomach enzymes. So remember, they can't get broken down because they are resistant to proper digestion. They can reach the small intestine where they enter the bloodstream. So summary, Sean talks about lectins destroy the cells in the gut by binding to them, and they bind to any carbohydrates found in the body, resulting in immune reactions. So even if you're eating a small amount of raw or undercooked kidney beans, for example, they can cause reactions in some people as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea because of this type of lectin that binds to red blood cells once it passes through the bloodstream. So common symptoms: inflammation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, joint pain. And one of the carbohydrates that lectins binds to is called glucosamine, a carbohydrate that covers your joints. So more important for us athletes, the lectin found in wheat, which I find on the wheat Zoomer, binds to glucosamine, causing inflammation and pain around the joint. So this is what I wanted to dive into this for. Lectins may also cause weight gain. We thought this was healthy, but in ancestral health, it was what we ate by the season. So you want to look at seasonal eating and not things that are not available in the wintertime that you're eating summer foods, because it's not natural. So in the winter months, for example, when food was scarce, we intentionally gained some weight by eating lectin-rich foods as wheat Nowadays, we don't have scarcity of our food and we don't have a problem. So mucus, I've been talking a lot about this lately on my Instagram because green tea, I'm learning so much more about how that can help the mucus lining. And a thick fluid, that's mucus, that lines the nasal passage and the gut wall lining. Interesting that this is a lectin detecting agent. Mucus is also a bunch of long chains of sugar molecules that trap a lot of lectins in its path. Kind of reminds me of those fly traps. Our bodies detect when we have eaten lectin containing foods, and we immediately begin to produce mucus to clear up the lectins. So when we have excessive mucus production, we feel inflamed and blocked up as a result. So he talks about where plants lectins are found in the fruit or the seed of plants. So this could be in beans, peas, lentils, legumes as peanuts. I was just telling someone that peanuts are not a nut, they're legumes. So you want to look out for how much you're eating of tomatoes, wheat, potatoes, beans, chickpeas, soybeans, and peanuts. Also, it says dairy casein A1 is a lectin found in most commercial milk. So that's often why people say dairy. If it doesn't make you feel good, make sure you're getting the A2 or avoid cow dairy and go for more of the goat, sheep, and buffalo cheeses or hard cheeses. Now, nightshades are tomatoes. Tomato is a nightshade. And nightshades can be correlated to joint pain, arthritis, and digestive issues. So you may want to pay attention. I have clients do a food and mood log that we use in nutritional therapy and start to see patterns of what they ate, how they felt, and even add in your biometrics as your heart rate variability will change and your heart rate if you've eaten foods that are inflammatory to your body. So we want to pay attention to even what's in the white potatoes and peppers and all these different things that might seem healthy, but you might find yourself react. Now, why is that? So let's look at this other article I found from selfhack.com. Are you lectin sensitive using genes, symptoms, and blood tests? So you can see this article, I'll put the link in the show notes. It's a long article you can read about lectin sensitivity, the lectin sensitive spectrum, and the 3 classes of people who are lectin sensitive. So this is theory looking at patterns who was or not lectin sensitive with Joe Cohen that started the selfhack.com. Now, he found that those with health issues were significantly started by lectins because of genetic predispositions in a combination with a heavy lectin consumption. So if you're vegan, people in this class will have family members with lectin sensitivity and one parent with it for sure. Now, those who developed lectin sensitivity after a period of acute or chronic stress, then he found another category, people who develop lectin sensitivity after chronic immune activation from biotoxins, infections, chronic injury, excess exercise, lack of sleep, and chronic circadian rhythm disruption, which is most clients I test lately. So you could be fit and healthy on the outside, but you could be one of these not so healthy on the inside. And that's why we want to save some money and invest in your health and not just guess that you're doing all the right things by training and eating food that's natural, but maybe you're not reacting well to it. And a result causing leaky gut. And you'll listen to upcoming podcasts on the gut-brain connection and vagal tone, that gut-brain connection is really a big issue we need to pay attention to. That always worries me is brain issues as I get older, memory loss and brain fog, dementia. So you want to look at, as he's saying in this article, someone with intermittent brain fog, that's a symptom to lectin sensitivity. And this happens because lectins wreak havoc on the hypothalamus. And chronic brain fog is a symptom that is an infection or biotoxin. And so we can see this in lab tests. Because most of the time people develop a chronic infection or biotoxin, automatically increase sensitivity to lectins, both directly by immune activation or indirectly by chronic sympathetic, or also known as fight or flight, caused by the inflammation. So fascinating, right? What we want to always look at the whole picture, the holistic approach to health and wellness and longevity. So risk factors. Here's what selfhack.com says. Psychological stress, excess exercise, marathons, Ironmans, long distance training events, a vegan vegetarian diet, which is often lower in nutrients we need, so vitamin A, and is often higher in lectins. Retinol is a critical immune tolerance, and high lectin load for a sustained period of time will create chaos, he says. Less sun exposure. UV and infrared are the best ways to shut the immune system down. So UVB helps create vitamin D3, which is necessary for immune tolerance. Less consumption of fish. DHA is critical for immune balance. Chronic circadian disruptions, which imbalances the gut immune system. Infections, biotoxin exposure. It's what we identify a lot on the functional lab test assessments. Sleep deprivation, which will disturb your immune system for sure. Antibiotics, which will, of course, disrupt your gut flora because they kill off all the good and the bad bacteria. And that takes a couple years to rebuild the good bacteria, which hopefully we'll dive into with Dr. William Davis and on the super gut. Now, possible EMF exposure. Some animal studies show that EMF increases the nervous system and affects sleep. So lots of cell Wi-Fi signals that we all have around us could be something to look into in the future. So why do these risk factors increase lectin sensitivity? You can look at activations. You can go into all this and the mechanism of action. He gets into all of this. So really interesting. Now, what are the genetics to look at? You know, we can dive into that too, as I am in my Wild Health program, we get into that. So I think you can go look at selfhack.com blog. Are you lectin sensitive using gene symptoms and blood tests? So check that out. Fatigue in the day, brain fog, lower BMI, cold tolerance, result of low T3, increased sympathetic nervous system. How many people have that? Low blood pressure, immune imbalances, excess anxiety, skin problems, fungus, eczema, psoriasis, not handling glucose as carbs well, joint discomfort, as Dr. Gundry talks about. So interesting, long list, right? Symptoms of lectin-related food intolerances. So you can get the blood markers. Here you go. You can look at AP, I never could say this, epinectin, TNF alpha, interleukin 6 is IL-6, white blood cell count. And really looking at your T3. I find everyone's T3 is low. Not say everyone has it, but I'm seeing pattern low, free, and total T3, and often higher thyroid stimulating hormone. And Joe here says Dr. Gundry has independently noticed this with his lectin sensitive patients. Low T3 is cause and a symptom of lectin sensitivity. This is interesting because I'm seeing low T3 and lectin sensitivity and gut wheat issues. Low T3 is because of inflammation and oxidative stress, but it's always looking at why. Where is the stress coming from, right? Why are you inflamed? Why is there oxidative stress? What's going on? So again, we don't want to treat anything with a Band-Aid. We want to figure out the why and dig deeper and dig deeper. It's a continuous investigation to collect all these clues together, figure out what's going on with you as a unique individual, not a one-size-fits-all approach. So he talks about Dr. Gundry claims that the thyroid tissue is similar to lectin proteins, and our immune systems gets confused and attacks the thyroid tissue. So I get a lot of people with autoimmune issues. So this is why we want to avoid lectins. At least see how you feel, or if you don't know, do the lectin zoomer that you can do with Vibrant Wellness. Lower ferritin. Lectin seems to create an inflammatory environment in the gut that reduces iron absorption, and lower insulin, lectin sensitive who aren't leptin resistant. So lots of information. I want to go in the genetic SNPs that are related to gut inflammation, leaky gut, nervous system, inflammation, oxidative stress, circadian dysregulation. So just to summarize, you can look at this video, lectin sensitive gene. He's the genes that Joe Cohen says on his website, CNRI. I won't read them all, but you can go and find them on here. And then he has an article you can find. But good information from Joe. And then let's look at Dr. Gundry's website too. But Joe has a list you can download from his website, Lectin Avoidance Diet Not Allowed Phase 1. And those nightshades, fruits. Oh, like it is why I would say why the carnivore diet gets to be this effective plan for people with all these issues. But as Dr. William Davis says, it's not normal not to be able to eat all these foods. So you need to look at how you're making your food, properly prepare them, and not have the same things every day. You shouldn't have to take 50 supplements and avoid so much food. You need to heal your gut. So there's avoidance diet, phase 1, and then phase 2. It gets into but what foods not allowed and what foods are allowed. You can get that from the website of, I got it from here, Joe Cohen's. Okay, now Mind Body Green had a great article from Dr. Gundry, foods high in lectins, what to avoid to heal your gut. So I find this interesting. Again, there's not much left to eat. So eating cashews, there's a lot of pop-ups on here, but peanuts and cashews, you might be eating them because there's something quick and easy in your training or a busy workout day and you have work, but legumes are loaded with killer lectins. Cashew. Yeah, so no cashews. Here's no corn. Corn is really hard. I know I can feel my pulse go up when I have corn because I can't do wheat and cross-contamination and all the different forms of wheat or corn. They act like wheat in my body, but avoiding just wheat and grains. So corn is not a vegetable, but it's a grain, has high lectin content. Since corn is one of the biggest crops, most food additives, corn syrup. I saw a video once on how much corn, but corn syrup, corn starch, corn flakes, breakfast cereal, corn chips. It's just corn is in throughout the day, especially if you eat fast food. Now, quinoa is seen as a grain, but people think it's a great gluten-free substitute for wheat, but it has a lot of lectins. So it's not beneficial for your digestive tract if you have inflammation there. Immune system might be reactive. And make sure if you do eat grains that you're properly preparing them. Soak and ferment before cooking to reduce its potential toxicity. And you can go back to Sean Wells' website at the very end of this handout. He talks about how to properly prepare these foods. Because people always say, well, people have been eating those foods for years, but what's the big deal? So here's how to reduce anti-nutrient content in foods. You have to soak, sprout, ferment, boil, peeling and seeding, removing the seeds and the skins from fruit and vegetables, going refined. So you can get more information from the guide on Sean Wells. And I think fermentation is what we'll talk about. If you read Super Gut book by Dr. William Davis that I'm reading again, read it a couple years ago and I pulled it out because I keep seeing this pattern with everybody. So vegetable oils, as you know, they're not healthy for you. They're high lectin beans or seeds, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, potent sources of lectins. Worse, much of the corn and soybeans used to make this oil are genetically modified, meaning that they've been bred to produce extra strength lectins to help them be more resistant to insects. So the fats in these vegetable oils are primarily omega-6 fats, meaning that they give you a double dose of inflammation when you consume them. Whew. So all these oils come from grains or seeds or sprayed with Roundup, so then you get the high levels of glyphosate. Sheesh, legumes and beans. Beans, peas, soybeans, lentils, other legumes, also known as pulses, have high lectin content more than any other food group. They're also known to cause gas, bloating, indigestion. So they're not as healthy as you think of them if you're doing a vegan vegetarian diet. So it's not that they're all bad, but you have to, again, properly prepare them and don't eat them every day. So you want to lower the inflammation and then learn how to reduce the lectin content by pressure cooking them. So dairy. What about dairy? We said avoiding the casein A1 dairy and choosing more of the goat, sheep, water buffalo milk, as well as the cow milk in Southern European cows. Squashes, with the exception of cucumbers. Squash family fruit with the peels and seeds that grow on the vines, including pumpkins, acorn squash, zucchini, and butternut squash. They contain lectins, and all varieties of squash contain sugars that cue your body to store weight in preparation for winter. All more reason not to eat the more of the seeds. Well, I think you need to listen to your body, listen to how your energy is after you ate these, pay attention to how you feel. But remember, we're exercising. So you want to make sure you're not having an inflammation from your food. Now, Dr. Gundry, of course, has a book that talked all about this. Why are lectins bad for you? And looking at lectin, gluten, grains, looking at gluten-free, this is how I got down this rabbit hole, trying to get people off wheat. And some of the markers, as I said, on the wheat zoomer was a wheat, part of the wheat that is a lectin. But then also looking at foods, the nightshades, again, paying attention to how you feel, but also how you prepare them and how frequently you're eating these foods. So if you have these different symptoms, as nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, upset stomach, bloating, gas, weight gain, but also if you have gut inflammation, looking at this marker, I find wheat germ agglutinin, WGA. This is found in the wheat products, and WGA mimics insulin. So it can block your body's insulin receptors and can lead to decreased muscle mass and feelings of hunger. So I found this article trying to help my clients going, whoa, you really need to avoid lectins, the wheat lectin, and these other foods, and just do elimination diet and see how you feel. So remember, certain vegetables as the tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplant. Certain nut seeds as cashews, peanuts, pumpkin, and sunflower seeds. Grain-fed, farm-raised animal proteins. You have to watch for lectins, beans, and legumes, and A1 dairy. So you can look at Dr. Gundry, has great resources of, again, what Sean Wells said, soak, pressure cooking, peel into seed, ferment. And he has a list of foods to avoid and foods to eat on the Gundry diet. So going into avocados, walnuts, macadamia nuts, or pistachios, dark chocolate, help you stick to lectin-free diet, and tips to what to eat, yes or no. So what vegetables you can have, other vegetables, so a long list. So I'd rather clients focus on what you can eat, looking at their food sensitivity tests, looking at these lectins, wheat, grains, and if they're reactive to FODMAPs, and oxalates and phytates and what they can eat. So it gets kind of stressful. What oils to cook with? There's a lot of options. Avocado oil, coconut oil, macadamia nut, MCT oil. Perilla oil is what he suggested to Dr. Gundry, told my client that's working with them to use. Never heard of that one. Nuts and seeds, what you can have. Often they can irritate your gut if it's really flared up. So making a nut butter might be better for you. Energy bars, I'm not a big fan of that he suggests, and then these processed foods that aren't great, but limited, and then noodles. Anyways, you can look at that, but there's lots of seafood, lots of pasture raised poultry, meat, grass-fed and grass-finished, and figuring out what that is for you. Fruits that are in season, dairy products, buffalo, hard cheeses, goat cheese. He has a big list. So again, you need to personalize this information. Ideally, test what works for you with the lab testing. We can spend that money on your health, but I try to avoid all these flours, and I don't like any of those sweeteners. I think they're horrible for you. Erythritol, monk fruit, stevia, they don't work for my body, but they may work for you. So, looking at what to avoid, of course, we know refined starchy foods, grains, sprouted grains, pseudo grains, and grasses. This is what people that have gluten, wheat, lectin sensitivity, this might be a list that you might need to do a food elimination diet. avoiding all these things is corn products, corn syrups, oats, quinoa, rye, all types of wheat, including wheatgrass. It's in your athletic greens drink, white rice, wild rice. It's really seems sad, but again, go back to look at the foods that you can eat. So that's on GundryMD.com. You can look at what to eat. I, of course, my body likes to just eat grass-fed meat right now. That's what I want. And then I'm trying to eat more salmon and drink my green tea. So I'm going to do a podcast on green tea because it's pretty amazing all the benefits if you have 3 to 5 cups a day. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. That's just kind of on here. Lectins, again, selfhack.com, shopping list, guides. But I would look up the wheat zoomer and you can learn more on the Vibrant Wellness. I shared my lab test video again that we did last year or 2 years ago, but you can see the comprehensive report that you get. And it's pretty interesting lab test that I think everyone should get. And you can see and get motivated if you struggle with these different symptoms, which are everything. Maybe you have low vitamin D that you can't improve even with supplementation. You have inflammation, maybe you have joint pain, you have brain fog, diarrhea, bloating, gas. The list goes on, right? That could just be things we can identify getting a blood test, the wheat zoomer, and it tests all these markers, including that one I just said, which is the wheat part as a lectin. So that was just I wanted to share today. If you have any questions, let me know, and we can go down another rabbit hole next week. See ya.